3, hit it!
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's Caffeine for the Soul. And today, I wanted to talk about an odd-sounding idea, which is the notion that as we become more intolerant of certain things, our lives become measurably, some would say immeasurably, better. And bear with me, and I'll walk you through this. So when I first started coaching, I trained with an organization that was created by a man named Thomas Leonard. And he talked about this idea that he called tolerations. And so one of the first things he would have you do with your clients, one of the first things he did with his clients, was he would have them make a list of stuff in their life that they were putting up with, that they were tolerating. And by tolerating, what he meant was, you don't like it, but you're putting up with it. And he would have them, for each toleration, do one of two things. Either change it or accept it. Those were your choices. But tolerating it was no longer a choice. So if it was something you could change, you would. So things like a dripping faucet, things like an item of clothing that you don't really like, but it doesn't quite fit, but you wear it anyways. Things like something up with your car that you just never get around to fixing because it doesn't really matter even though it bugs you. And in fact, bugs was one of the things that I called them in my work. We'd make a list of bugs, and then we'd look to exterminate the bugs, either by taking care of them, or in some cases by deciding, you know what, I'm just not going to let this bug me anymore. This doesn't need to bug me. And it made a tangible difference. Now, at the time, I had no idea why. I just thought it was a cool thing. But looking back on it, I can see that it took up headspace. Tolerations are like tiny little holes in the bottom of a boat. Individually, you don't take on much water from them. But if you have enough of them, there's just this constant seepage that goes on. And so that was my first experience of how being less tolerant might be a good thing. As I sort of adapted my work to kind of follow my growing understanding of how cool human beings actually are and how our feelings are telling us about what's going on with thought and not what's going on in the world, I started to see it a little differently. And I noticed that I lost my tolerance for stress and pressure. And I was freaked out by that because I thought my ability to tolerate stress and pressure were my competitive advantage. I had read a thing, I think it was Tony Robbins who said that if you want to find somebody, the most successful person in the room, find the person who can handle the most stress. And I, was going to put the world on my broad shoulders and carry it around because I was going to be able to take it. And I had a thing on my bulletin board for a while, a quote by Jim Rohn, who was actually Tony Robbins' mentor, that said, "Don't wish it was easier, wish you were tougher." So for me, my ability to handle stress and pressure was part of my identity. It was part of my manliness. It was part of my effectiveness in the world. And when I first started to see something about the peace in our nature, the quiet in our nature, the mental health that we're made of, the well-being that is innate in us, I stopped being able to handle stress at all. I would get so uncomfortable so quickly that I didn't know what to do. And I freaked out because I thought I was broken. And then an analogy occurred to me. And it's an analogy you've probably heard. It's probably one I've shared on here. And I've been told since that this isn't a truism, that it doesn't really work this way, but it's such a great analogy. Let's play with it. And it's the analogy of a boiling frog. And you've probably heard that if a frog jumps into a pot of boiling water, it'll jump out again immediately. But if you put it in cold water and then you just gradually turn up the heat, degree by degree, it will continue to adapt to the temperature until it boils alive. And that occurred to me that was sort of what happened in my experience, is I'd just been in a boiling pot of stress and pressure for so long that I was used to it. I tolerated it pretty damn well. And when I jumped out of the pot and found what it felt like to live without that, to live in and from a place of quiet and beautiful feeling inside me, getting back into that pot just felt awful. But I still thought that losing my tolerance for those uncomfortable feelings was problematic because I thought they were inevitable, because I thought they were a function of my environment. And if I wanted to do cool things and if I wanted to do big things, I was gonna be stressed and pressured. And so I needed to get back to being able to handle it. I'd lost my toughness, my mental toughness. But then, as I started to see that our feelings are the barometers of our thoughts, as I started to see, as I mentioned earlier, that we live in the feeling of our thinking, not the feeling of the world, not the feeling of our circumstances, then I realized that stress and pressure are feelings saying, hey, wake up. You are really misusing the gift of thought. You are thinking yourself into a mess right now. And you'd be better off if you didn't. And it's a lot like, I think of it a lot like, if you're sitting in one position for too long, you get uncomfortable, so you move. Well, if you're stuck in some thinking for too long, it gets uncomfortable in your body. But somehow, because we don't recognize that's what's going on, instead of moving our thoughts, instead of getting off the thinking that we're in and just opening up to any new thought, we stay, we double down. We go, no, I've got to think harder about this. So when I saw that stress and pressure were not inevitable, that they were the system's way of waking me up to the innocent misuse of the gift of thought, they were the system's way of going, ooh, God, I've been sitting like this for too long. I've been thinking like this for too long. I need a break. I need to move around. I need to shake things up a bit. Then I saw why losing my tolerance for stress and pressure was such a good thing. Because it meant I responded to the alarm the first time. I responded to the discomfort the first time and got off the thinking. Instead of going, wow, this really hurts. Yeah, but I got to keep going. And maybe if I go long enough, then I'll get out the other side, not seeing that it was like turning up the volume on an alarm clock instead of just waking up. So what I've seen since that time and what I'm offering up for you to play with this week is to just see if you can become a little less tolerant of your own crappy feelings, a little bit less tolerant of your own crappy thinking. Not in the sense that you've got to then replace it with positive thinking and you've got to replace it with positive feeling and you've got to replace the noise with meditation, and not as a doing, but as a noticing. Because as you get less tolerant of your noise, you automatically get quieter. As you get less tolerant of your discomfort, you find your way back to comfort more quickly. As you get less tolerant of stress and pressure, but with the recognition that you don't fix stress and pressure by changing the circumstance, you do it by getting off the thinking. You'll get off the thinking quicker. And you'll find yourself spending more and more time out of the pot, out of the boiling water, and in your innate health, your innate well-being, your innate clarity, your innate freedom of mind. have fun, learn heaps, and happy exploring. I'll talk with you soon.